Joining us now out of Niagara Falls is Jason Unruhe, political commentator. Hello, Jason. You've been seeing how this has been unfolding for the last couple of days. Your thoughts, please.
This is a very clear plot by the United States, and one that they're not willing to give up so easily. I mean, it's pretty obvious by now that this is a U.S.-backed attempt to overthrow the government, which has largely been unsuccessful. I think that perhaps in this case, the Guaido and U.S. forces are probably doubling down, hoping that the violence that they've been carrying out today will snowball into something larger, that maybe more people will join them, maybe members of the military will side with them, and that will make things snowball into a possible coup against Maduro. But it really doesn't seem like that's going to be the case right here. The vast majority of Venezuelans have already made it abundantly clear that they do want Maduro in power. I also think it's very interesting the day that they happen to choose to do things on. I mean, I understand it started yesterday, but then they continued more riots today, even after it was clear that the coup did not work. Today is May 1st. This is most commonly associated as May Day, things that traditionally a holiday for socialists, which the Maduro government does describe itself as. And maybe this is an attempt to take some of the wind out of the sails. Or maybe this was planned to try to oust him on that very day in order to undermine the history of this date. And I really wouldn't put it past them to do something like that. I mean, I would probably see that if in the future Maduro was overthrown, they would attempt to erase much of the Bolivarian history as possible. But I think this is almost seemingly like a last-ditch effort by Guaido in the United States to try to ferment a counter-revolution, to try to perform a coup. It's very clearly not working. The people are not coming to the side of Guaido. And there are even reports that yesterday a military vehicle was according to one report, stolen by Guaido's supporters, and then it was used to run over other supporters. But again, these reports are sketchy, and we don't really know everything that's going on right now. But it seems that at least Guaido and such allied forces are doubling down on this day in hopes of trying to make this spark into something much larger. But I think, as we've seen from the events of today, and even more so the events of yesterday, that's not something that's going to be coming anytime soon.
And that's the thing, Jason, because today we heard, we heard Juan Guaido say, today's the day, everybody pour out into the streets, supposedly let's take this country back for the people. We heard the Trump administration officials pretty much allude to the same thing, that today is going to be the day of a transition to peace and back to the Venezuelan people. And then today we're hearing kind of a different, a little bit of different tone from Juan Guaido. He's saying we're going to carry out these street protests until we achieve our objective. Well, guess what? They're kind of violent. They're throwing Molotov cocktails at security forces. And my question to you is, how can Washington openly and overtly support mayhem and anarchy until it reaches its objective on Venezuelan soil there with Guaido at the helm?
Well, this has been part and parcel of the way that the United States has operated for decades, if not centuries. I mean, the United States has never shied away from using force against a country whose only crime is defying their interests, or even just defying their will in general. We have to understand that the United States has a long history of interference inside Venezuela as well, and much of that a previous period known as La Violencia. The violence, which the United States was also a big part of. Overthrowing governments in Latin America is a long tradition for the United States, and one that they take very proudly. I mean, I could list all the time that the United States has done that, but this program doesn't have the amount of time necessary to go into all of the incidents. I mean, it's very clear, Jason, from their invasion.
But it's funny when you mention they're using violence. It's not U.S. troops. They're behaving violently. They're having Venezuelans kill and maim Venezuelans. They did it with Iraqis killing Iraqis, Afghans killing Afghans. The U.S. kind of just feels the flames, just to say, stands on the sidelines and hopes for the best.
Yes, it's trying to get them to work as proxy forces for them, feed them misinformation, etc., get them to try to do as much of the dirty work for them as possible. And when you're really facing a situation where you're trying to overthrow a country, I mean, technically it's a smart move, but it's a very underhanded one, and it's a very disgraceful one to essentially deliberately turn groups of people against each other in order just to forward your own interests and to manipulate them like this. And this is a very despicable way that the United States has been working for some time. We even see a kernel of this in the United States itself. And there's frequently, acts of violence by the members of the public against other members of the public. So this seems like this very much is a tactic that's used by the United States quite often.
Thanks for joining us there out of Niagara Falls. Jason Unruhe, political commentator.